Well, hey there, folks. I'm meteorologist Matt Barentine. Obviously, we are tracking Hurricane Rafael down in the tropics here, and this is making its way into Cuba here next few hours. It has been strengthening this morning, and the 3D imagery really shows this. Keep in mind, we look at these maps a lot, and they're in 2 dimensions, but a tropical system and a hurricane is very much a 3-dimensional structure. In that 3rd dimension, the vertical, is extremely important in the development of the system and in the steering of the system. Here you go. You can really see, you can see the eye opening up. We're beginning to see an eye in the storm. And as we zoom in, you can really see the height of these clouds building up around the center of that eye. Once again, important to the development. The higher those clouds are, the stronger the storm is. And also, the easier it is, honestly, to track it because of the steering currents. I'll get into that in a second. First off, here is a 110 mile per hour storm. That is now as of the 9 a.m. update here this morning. So it's a strong Category 2, almost up there on a Category 3 storm, getting close to it. And in fact, now the Hurricane Center has it as a Category 3 right before it makes landfall in Cuba. Crosses Cuba today, then into the Gulf overnight tonight, and then it spends the next couple of days tracking westward slowly in the Gulf of Mexico, likely as it's still a fairly strong hurricane. Now, once it gets to the central Gulf, it's going to start running into some issues. It's going to start running into some cooler water and some upper level wind shear that will begin to weaken the storm. That is a certainty. But you notice the track becomes a lot less certain when that begins to happen. So here's what we're talking about. First off, those water temperatures, just not warm enough to support a tropical system once it reaches about the center part of the Gulf. And then the upper level wind shear. This will be getting stronger as well. And this will begin ripping the tops of the clouds off here. Remember I talked about the vertical structure of a hurricane. Very tall clouds in the center. Those start getting torn apart. So as the storm weakens, the storm also shortens. It becomes shorter in the vertical. That has a big impact on the steering of the storm. Look at how the models are all very close together through Friday morning. That means the storm is still a hurricane at that point, and that ridge of high pressure in the upper levels of the atmosphere is steering it westward. But now that it begins weakening, those clouds start to shorten, those upper level winds begin to weaken as well. At least the impact on them begins to weaken as well. So you see this storm pushing off to the west, but then what happens to it after that once it starts weakening? Well, that's going to be the big question mark, and it's going to be one that's going to be very hard to answer as it gets weaker. But the good news is once it gets weaker, not as consequential exactly where it goes. So less worries about what eventually happens to it when it's just barely a tropical storm. And that's probably what we're looking at by the end of the weekend. The storm, these things, I'm going to get back on there. These things can rapidly ramp up, and they can also rapidly decay and weaken. And that's what we're going to see. As soon as it starts running into hostile conditions that don't support it anymore, it will start falling apart fairly quickly. This is the GFS, or the American model. Here we are at noon on Saturday. It shows it basically due south of Louisiana. Still has a fairly strong storm, but it's beginning to weaken. Here we are at noon on Sunday, south of Louisiana coastline. Now watch what happens between noon on Sunday and noon on Monday. It doesn't move. In fact, it starts to back off and it weakens even more. So that was as far north as it got here with the GFS model. Yesterday, this model had it making landfall in our area as a very weak tropical storm. Now it's not even getting it to land. So let's check out another model. This is the European model. As we go through the next couple of days, it will be in the southern Gulf. As we go into the weekend, this model still has it in the southern Gulf. Keeps it a little stronger, so the high pressure ridge continues to work on it and pushing it off to the west. And as it begins to weaken, and it pushes it south into Mexico. So remember, the other model stopped it right before it made landfall in Louisiana and backed it into the middle of the Gulf and fell apart. This one just dives it straight down into Mexico. So some different things can happen once the storm begins to weaken. But overall for us, our impacts are going to be minimal. We're going to see some off and on showers over the coming days, kind of some unsettled weather. But even the amount of rain doesn't look like it'll be huge. This is the European model through noon on Monday. It shows accumulations at most of 1 inch to 1.5 inches, at most. Most areas actually seeing less than that, 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. I mean, that's over a number of days. So that means a lot of light drizzles, a lot of misty kind of conditions, but not a whole lot of heavy rain. So for us, the main threat will be and continues to be dangerous surf. We can keep folks out of the water, we'll be just fine. But if folks are getting in the water, we could have some issues because we have life-threatening rip currents out there in the coming days. The rain that we get will be beneficial. I don't think it'll actually be enough to break our drought, though. 1.5 inches of rain would be great. It won't be enough to break the drought. 1/4 of an inch of rain doesn't even really scratch the surface of the drought. Obviously, some uncertainties remain here, but those uncertainties, don't change the fact that I don't think this will be a very strong system in our area. We're not going to be looking at a landfall of a major hurricane or something like that on the northern Gulf Coast. It will not have the ability to do that because of the hostile conditions in the northern Gulf. Could it still reach the northern Gulf? Yes. But once again, we're just talking about a rain event one way or the other. And as if it dies way to the south there, like that model was showing, it doesn't directly impact us at all. Some of that moisture gets dragged up towards the northern Gulf Coast, but it won't be very much. And that's why we're seeing those rainfall amounts really just not that high. Futurecast today does show passing showers. We're going to see some rain out there today. We'll see more of this in the coming days. Once again, nothing directly to do with Rafael, just sort of an unsettled weather pattern across the area with moisture, high moisture content in the air. Forecast highs will be in around 80-ish, maybe 81, 82, depending on where you're at. But most of us right around 80 degrees. And here's that long-range outlook. And really the forecast is kind of benign over the next 7 days. I mean, there will be some rain, obviously, off and on. It'll be mainly overcast with some showers here and there for us through the end of the week and on into the upcoming weekend. We may have to kind of adjust these rain chances up and down a bit. But I doubt we adjust them up to 100%. I doubt we adjust them down to 0%. We're going to have some level of rain around. So just have a rain gear with you, have an umbrella in the car, make sure you have that with you. At some point in the coming days, you're likely to need it. And this unsettled pattern will probably last through Monday. Of course, that is Veterans Day. A lot of kids have off for school there on Monday. So that's how it looks over the next 7 days. Of course, we'll keep you up to date with everything with Rafael. If anything significant changes, of course, anything little changes, we'll keep you up to date. Just stay tuned to Fox 10.